Hello, listener. It's 2:47 p.m. in Taylorsville, North Carolina. Population 2,100. Maybe 22 if you count the folks living just outside town limits. And right now, every single one of those people is about to learn that being a small town in the Appalachian foothills means you're isolated in ways that matter when something goes very, very wrong. I'm looking at my phone. 6 missed calls from the Taylorsville Police Department. 3 from people I went to high school with. And 1 from my sister who works at the Walmart in Hickory, asking if what she's hearing on the scanner is real. My name is David Morgan. I've been broadcasting on WACB 98.5 FM from this little station on Main Street for 11 years. Normally at 2:47 on a Thursday afternoon, I'm playing classic country for the lunch crowd at Myra's Diner and giving updates about the church potluck schedule. Today, I'm trying to confirm whether what Chief Holland just told me on the phone is actually happening, or if this is some kind of mistake. It's not a mistake. At 2:36 p.m. 11 minutes ago, there was an incident at the Taylorsville Furniture Factory on Industrial Drive. That's the big manufacturer on the east side of town. Employs about 300 people from Taylorsville and Alexander County. Makes office furniture. Ships it all over the southeast. According to Chief Holland, a worker on the assembly line attacked a supervisor. Not punched, not shoved. Attacked in a way that the 3 officers who responded are still trying to make sense of. Within minutes, other workers started showing violent behavior. Within 10 minutes, the factory floor descended into what the chief described as complete chaos. And before I tell you why this matters more in Taylorsville than it would in Charlotte or Raleigh, before I explain why a small Appalachian town is the worst possible place for this to happen, I need you to do something. If you're watching this later on YouTube, if someone archived this broadcast and you found it, subscribe to Outbreak FM right now. Because what's about to happen in a town of 2,100 people surrounded by mountains and forest is going to be different from every city outbreak you've seen. Hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments if you're from Taylorsville or Alexander County or anywhere in the foothills. Then understand that small towns don't have the resources cities have. We don't have backup. We have each other. At 2:49 p.m., Chief Gary Holland. I've known Gary since we were both in Little League together. Chief Holland has a total of 9 full-time officers in the Taylorsville Police Department. 9. Serving a town of 2,100, plus the surrounding unincorporated areas. On a normal Thursday, maybe 3 or 4 officers are on duty. The rest are off shift. Right now, Gary has 5 officers responding to the furniture factory. That's more than half his force. And they're responding to something they don't have training for, don't have equipment for, and don't have any kind of protocol for. At 2:51 p.m., I need to tell you about the furniture factory because the layout matters. It's a large, single-story building, maybe 200,000 square feet of manufacturing floor, 300 employees. Some in the office section, most on the manufacturing floor with the equipment and assembly lines. When whatever's happening started happening, people ran in every direction. Some made it outside. Some are trapped inside. Some. Gary didn't want to tell me how many casualties they're seeing. That's not a good sign. 2:53 p.m. The transmission pattern, if this is what I think it is, if this matches what's been happening on the mainland for the past month, byte transmission. 8 to 12 minute onset. 15 to 20 minute progression to violent behavior. And we're checking my watch. 17 minutes past the initial incident. Which means if people got bitten at 2:36, they're transitioning right now. At 2:55 p.m., Taylorsville sits at the intersection of Highway 64 and Highway 90. 64 runs east-west, connects us to Hickory 20 miles east and to Lenoir 15 miles west. 90 runs north-south through town. Those highways are our lifelines, our connection to everywhere else. And if the factory incident spreads beyond the factory before we can contain it, Highway 64 is how people evacuate. It's also how infected could spread to Hickory or Lenoir if we don't establish some kind of control. 2:57 p.m. I'm getting texts now. From Lisa Martinez, who works at the Dollar General. From Tommy Chun at the AutoZone. People asking if they should close their businesses. If they should go home. If they should drive to Hickory, where there's a hospital and more police. I'm telling them to stay where they are until we know more. Because panic movement is worse than no movement until you have information. At 2:59 p.m., Alexander County has approximately 37,000 people total. Taylorsville is the county seat. We have a small county government complex, a courthouse, a sheriff's department serving the whole county. Sheriff Mike Peterson has maybe 20 deputies total covering 463 square miles of mountain and forest and farmland. The county's response capability is stretched thin on a normal day. Today, it's about to be overwhelmed. 3 p.m. exactly. The volunteer fire department is being activated. Taylorsville VFD, that's maybe 20 volunteers total. They're primarily firefighters, not EMAs, not law enforcement. But they're being asked to respond to the factory to help with. I'm not even sure what. Evacuation, triage, containment. At 3:02 p.m., the factory is 3/4 of a mile from downtown Taylorsville. From where I'm broadcasting right now on Main Street, I can see the factory building if I look east. It's that big beige metal structure you can see from half the town. 3/4 of a mile is close. Walking distance. Driving distance. Close enough that if infected individuals leave the factory and head toward downtown, they'll reach Main Street in under 15 minutes on foot. 3:04 p.m. I need to talk about what Taylorsville doesn't have. We don't have a hospital. We have a medical clinic with 3 doctors and maybe a dozen staff. We don't have a SWAT team. We don't have tactical response capability. We don't have a National Guard armory in town. Nearest one is in Statesville, 30 miles south. What we have is Gary Holland with 9 police officers, Mike Peterson with 20 deputies, and about 40 volunteer firefighters and EMTs scattered across the county. That's the response capability for an outbreak in a town where everyone knows everyone. At 3:06 p.m., the temperature is 78 degrees, late September in the North Carolina foothills. Perfect weather, clear skies. The leaves are just starting to turn in the mountains. It's beautiful. It's also going to affect how long infected individuals stay mobile. Not as hot as Georgia. Not as cold as Alaska. We're in the middle range where the infection will progress at standard rates. 3:08 p.m. I'm getting a call from Gary Holland again. Holding. He says the factory situation is worse than initial reports. Multiple infected individuals confirmed. At least 2 officers injured. They're establishing a perimeter around the building, but workers who evacuated early are scattered across the industrial park and into the Fayungwa residential areas on the east side of town. They don't know how many workers got out before showing symptoms. They don't know how many are infected but asymptomatic. They don't know containment status. At 3:10 p.m., the east side of Taylorsville, that's East Side Drive, Industrial Drive, Park Avenue, those are residential streets with houses built in the 70s and 80s. Probably 300 homes total. Maybe 800 people living in that area. If infected factory workers went to those streets, if they reached homes before symptoms manifested, we might have infections distributed across residential neighborhoods with no way to track them because we don't have the personnel for door-to-door. 3:12 p.m., the North Carolina State Highway Patrol is being notified. They can provide support, traffic control, maybe establish checkpoints on Highway 64. But Highway Patrol resources for this region are limited. A few dozen troopers covering multiple counties. Response time measured in 30 to 45 minutes minimum. At 3:14 p.m., I'm going to stay on this frequency and broadcast continuous updates because Taylorsville doesn't have the infrastructure for emergency notifications. We don't have a sophisticated alert system. We have this radio station, the police scanner, and word of mouth. I'm coordinating information for 2,100 people who need to know what's happening in their town. 3:16 p.m. The Alexander County Emergency Services Director is activating the County Emergency Operations Center. That's Carol Brennan. She's coordinating response from the county government complex, coordinating between Taylorsville PD, Sheriff's Department, Volunteer Fire, AMAs, and trying to get state resources activated. Carol is good at her job. But her job has never involved zombie outbreak response before. At 3:18 p.m., my sister called back from Hickory. She's hearing reports on social media about the furniture factory. Rumors spreading faster than official information. She's asking if she should drive here to get me. I'm telling her to stay in Hickory because driving into Taylorsville right now might mean driving into Containment Zone. 3:20 p.m. We're 34 minutes past the initial incident. If the progression timeline holds, and I've been monitoring mainland outbreaks, I know that timelines we're looking at second wave infection starting to transition. People who were bitten in the first 15 minutes are now becoming threats themselves. Exponential growth in a town of 2,100. At 3:22 p.m., the furniture factory employs people from all over Alexander County. From Taylorsville, from Hiddenite, from Stony Point, from unincorporated areas. Some of those workers drove home after evacuating. Some went to lunch before their shift started. Some are at the grocery store or the gas station or picking up kids from school. We might have infected individuals distributed across a 20-mile radius and no way to track them. 3:24 p.m. Stay on this frequency. Lock your doors. If you're in downtown Taylorsville, secure your business or your home. If you're on the east side near the factory, shelter in place and wait for police to clear the area. Because Taylorsville just became the smallest outbreak site in the United States. And small towns don't have backup plans. 3:26 p.m. Chief Holland is reporting they've established a perimeter around the furniture factory with the 5 officers on scene. But perimeter is generous. What they actually have is 2 patrol cars blocking the main entrance on Industrial. Drive-in officers trying to keep people from approaching the building. Not exactly a secure containment. At 3:28 p.m., the volunteer fire department arrived at the factory. Fire Chief Danny Martinez, Lisa's father, guy who coached half the kids in this town in youth soccer, Danny's on scene with about 8 volunteers. They're setting up for potential fire suppression because apparently some of the manufacturing equipment got damaged during the initial chaos and there's concern about electrical fires. But they're also seeing infected individuals through the factory windows. Danny says it's like nothing he's ever seen in 30 years of firefighting. 3:30 p.m. I'm getting reports from downtown businesses. Myra's Diner on Main Street is locking their doors. The Dollar General is closing early. The Taylorsville Times office is securing. Small businesses making individual decisions because there's no coordinated guidance yet. People in a small town making the same calculation. Is staying open worth the risk of something spreading through town? At 3:32 p.m., temperature still 78. That perfect North Carolina autumn afternoon that usually has people thinking about apple orchards and mountain drives. Today it's just the baseline for how fast the infection moves. 3:34 p.m. The Alexander County Sheriff's Department is deploying additional deputies to Taylorsville. Sheriff Peterson is sending maybe 10 deputies from other parts of the county. But those deputies are coming from Stony Point, from Hiddenite, from the northern parts of the county. 30 to 40 minute response time through mountain roads. We're going to have significant law enforcement presence eventually. Eventually doesn't help right now. At 3:36 p.m., Highway 64 eastbound toward Hickory is starting to see increased traffic. People who work in Taylorsville but live in Hickory are driving home early. People who heard rumors and are evacuating toward what they think is safer ground. The highway that's normally light mid-afternoon traffic is getting congested. 3:38 p.m. I need to talk about the geography around Taylorsville because it matters for containment and evacuation. We're in the foothills. To the north and west, brushy mountains. To the south, more rolling hills and farmland. To the east toward Hickory, the terrain flattens out some. The mountains and forests create natural boundaries, but they also create places where people can disappear. Hiking trails, hunting land, private property deep in the woods. If infected individuals wander into the forest, we lose track of them. And we don't have the resources for wilderness tracking operations. At 3:40 p.m., the medical clinic on Lillidoon Road is being notified to prepare for casualties. Dr. Sarah Williams delivered half the babies in this town, including me. She's preparing the clinic with her small staff for potential bite victims and injured. But the clinic has maybe 4 examination rooms and limited supplies. It's not built for mass casualty or for infectious outbreak. Dr. Williams is doing what she can with what she has. 3:42 p.m. I just got word that the Taylorsville Elementary School and the high school are going into lockdown. Principals making that call independently, based on what they're hearing. About 800 kids total between both schools. Parents are being notified to pick up children in organized release. Organized release meaning a line of cars wrapping around the parking lot, with parents trying to get their kids home safely. At 3:44 p.m., we're 48 minutes past initial incident. Checking timelines. That's 3 full transmission cycles if the 12-minute progression holds. 3 generations of infection. The math is starting to work against us. 3:46 p.m., Gary Howland calling again. Holding. He's saying they've had to neutralize 2 infected individuals who exited the factory and approached the perimeter. Both were factory workers. Both were people he knows knew. Gary sounds shaken. Small-town policing means you don't deal with strangers. You deal with neighbors. At 3:48 p.m., the factory workers who evacuated early are starting to be tracked down. Some called 911 to report they'd been exposed. Some went home and their families called in. Some are showing symptoms and becoming violent in their homes or vehicles. Each one is a separate incident requiring response. And we have maybe 15 officers total counting Taylorsville PD and the sheriff's deputies who've arrived. 3:50 p.m. The volunteer EMS service, Alexander County Rescue Squad, is being activated. That's maybe a dozen volunteer paramedics and EMTs. They're staging at the county EMS station, but there's discussion about whether they should respond to the factory scene or wait for casualties to be brought to them. Nobody wants to send volunteers into an active outbreak zone. At 3:52 p.m., social media is spreading information faster than official channels. Facebook posts from people at the factory, videos being shared. The Taylorsville Community Facebook group has about 1,500 members, and it's blowing up with posts, some accurate, some rumors, some panic. Digital word of mouth in a town where regular word of mouth usually handles everything. 3:54 p.m. Highway Patrol is reporting they're setting up a checkpoint on Highway 64 at the Alexander-Catawba county line. That's about 5 miles east of Taylorsville toward Hickory. They're screening vehicles leaving Alexander County. Temperature checks, visual assessment, trying to prevent infected individuals from reaching Hickory. But a checkpoint 5 miles out means there's a 5-mile radius around Taylorsville where people can move freely. That's a lot of area with a lot of small roads and forest access. At 3:56 p.m., the North Carolina National Guard is being contacted. Closest armory is in Statesville. Maybe 45 minutes to an hour deployment time once they're activated. But Guard activation requires state-level authorization. That means the governor's office needs to be briefed and approve deployment. That takes time we might not have. 3:58 p.m. I'm getting calls to the station. People asking what to do. A woman on East Side Drive saying her neighbor came home from work acting strange and violent. A man at the Exxon station saying someone tried to attack the cashier. A teacher at the high school asking if they should release students or keep them locked down. I'm relaying information to Carol Brennan at the EOC. She's coordinating response. But the calls are coming faster than we can process them. At 4 p.m., 1 hour past initial incident. The furniture factory is the confirmed origin point. But we're getting reports of infected individuals in at least 6 different locations around town now. The factory, East Side residential area, downtown Main Street, the high school parking lot, the Walmart parking lot on Highway 64, and the Taylorsville Auto Parts on Highway 90. 6 locations means distributed outbreak requiring distributed response with limited resources. 4:02 p.m. Temperature 77 and dropping slowly as we move toward evening. Sunsets at 7:16 tonight. 3 hours and 14 minutes of daylight left. When darkness comes, everything gets harder in a rural town without extensive street lighting. At 4:04 p.m., I need to address evacuation because people are asking, should they leave Taylorsville? Should they drive to Hickory or Charlotte or Statesville? Answer: if you're in a secure position right now, your home, your business, somewhere defensible, stay there. Don't get on the highways creating traffic and exposure. If you're not in a secure position, move to the nearest building you can secure and defend. Evacuation creates more problems than it solves when resources are this thin. 4:06 p.m. Sheriff Peterson is requesting mutual aid from surrounding counties. Caldwell County Sheriff to the west, Catawba County to the east, Iredell County to the south. Mutual aid means their deputies come help us. But mutual aid takes time to coordinate and deploy. And those counties have their own coverage responsibilities. We might get some help. We're not getting enough help. At 4:08 p.m., the volunteer fire department is reporting they're encountering infected individuals in the industrial park area around the factory. Danny Martinez says his volunteers aren't equipped for this. They have fire gear and medical equipment. They don't have weapons. They don't have protective equipment for dealing with violent infected individuals. He's pulling his people back from forward positions and establishing safer staging areas. 4:10 p.m. Gary Holland says they've confirmed at least 12 infected at the factory site and in the immediate surrounding area. 12 confirmed means probably more unconfirmed. Each infected person represents potential spread to family, co-workers, anyone they contacted. The contact tracing web in a small town where everyone knows everyone is impossibly complex. At 4:12 p.m., the schools are beginning organized student release. Parents lining up at both campuses. Some kids going home with parents. Some being held at school because parents can't be reached or parents are among the infected. 800 kids trying to get home safely while their town deals with something no small town is prepared for. 4:14 p.m. Stay on this frequency. I'm coordinating information between emergency services, the EOC, and the public. Main Street is mostly secured now with businesses locked down. East side of town is the active zone. If you're anywhere near Industrial Drive or the residential streets around it, shelter in place and wait for law enforcement to clear the area. Because Taylorsville is learning what happens when a small, tight-knit community faces outbreak conditions with resources built for normal rural emergencies. 4:16 p.m. The Highway Patrol checkpoint on Highway 64 is operational. 2 troopers screening vehicles leaving Alexander County. They've already diverted 3 vehicles with occupants showing concerning symptoms. Those 3 vehicles turned back toward Taylorsville for assessment. Checkpoint working as designed, but it's 2 troopers on 1 highway. There are a dozen other roads leading out of the county, smaller roads. Forest Service roads, paths through private property. We can't cover them all. At 4:18 p.m., Carol Brennan at the EOC is coordinating with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. State epidemiologists being briefed. CDC being notified. Official channels activating at state and federal level. But activation takes time, and we're 1 hour and 42 minutes into the outbreak. Official response is catching up to what's already happening on the ground. 4:20 p.m. Getting a report from Deputy Ramirez with the Sheriff's Department. He's responding to a residence on Park Avenue where a factory worker came home after the incident. Worker attacked family members. Deputy had to neutralize the threat. 2 family members bitten, showing early symptoms. That's 1 infected factory worker creating a family cluster of 3 additional infections. Exponential growth happening in real time in individual homes across town. At 4:22 p.m., the furniture factory itself is being secured, but not cleared. Gary Holland says they have the building surrounded, but they're not entering for full clearing operations. They don't have the personnel or equipment for building clearing against multiple infected individuals. The factory is contained from outside. What's inside stays inside until they get more resources. 4:24 p.m. I'm looking out the window of the station. Main Street is empty. Not usual Thursday afternoon empty. Completely empty. Like 3 a.m. empty. Every business closed. No pedestrians, no traffic. A town of 2,100 people has gone silent in the middle of the afternoon. At 4:26 p.m., temperature 76 degrees. The September afternoon cooling toward evening. In about an hour, the temperature will drop into the low 70s. By the time the sun sets, it'll be upper 60s. That cooling affects infected degradation timeline, but not as dramatically as extreme heat or cold. We're in the moderate range where infected stay mobile for the full 60 to 90-minute window. 4:28 p.m. The National Guard activation is confirmed. Governor's office approved deployment. Units from the Statesville Armory are mobilizing. Estimated arrival time in Taylorsville, 5:15 to 5:30 p.m. That's approximately 50 to 65 minutes from now. We need to hold containment for another hour before military support arrives. At 4:30 p.m., reports coming in from the Walmart parking lot on Highway 64 east of downtown. Someone showing infected behavior attacked shoppers in the parking lot. Walmart security and customers subdued the individual, but several people were bitten in the confrontation. Walmart is now locked down with approximately 200 people inside, including customers and employees. They're securing the building and assessing who might have been exposed. 4:32 p.m. Highway 64 westbound toward Lenoir is seeing evacuation traffic now too. People from Taylorsville and surrounding areas driving west. Highway Patrol doesn't have resources for a western checkpoint yet. Westbound traffic is unscreened. If infected individuals are in those vehicles, they're potentially spreading toward Lenoir and Caldwell County. At 4:34 p.m., the medical clinic on Lillidoon Road is overwhelmed. Dr. Williams has received 17 bite victims in the past 40 minutes. 17 people seeking immediate wound treatment. The clinic has 4 examination rooms and 3 doctors. They're treating people in the waiting room, in the parking lot, anywhere they can find space. And each bite victim is a potential infection waiting to manifest. 4:36 p.m. I need to talk about what happens in a small town when you personally know the casualties. The 2 officers Gary Holland mentioned being injured. One is Officer Mike Stevens. Played basketball with my brother. Coached my nephew's baseball team last spring. The other is Officer Jennifer Walsh. Her daughter is in my niece's Girl Scout troop. The factory workers who've been neutralized or contained. Some of those people shop at the same grocery store I do. Their kids go to school with my relatives' kids. This isn't abstract casualties. This is neighbors. At 4:38 p.m., Sheriff Peterson is establishing a command post at the county government complex, coordinating between his deputies, Taylorsville PD, Highway Patrol, Volunteer Fire, EMS, and preparing for National Guard arrival. The command post gives unified incident command structure to replace the chaotic individual responses, happening since 3 p.m. Better late than never, but we're 1 hour and 38 minutes in. 4:40 p.m. The high school student release is about 60% complete. Approximately 500 students have been picked up by parents. 300 remain at the school, either waiting for pickup or being held because parents can't be reached. Principal Davidson is making the decision to keep those 300 students at the school overnight if necessary rather than release them without confirmed safe custody. At 4:42 p.m., getting reports of infected individuals in the wooded areas north of town. Residents seeing people moving through the forest in erratic patterns. The Brushy Mountains area has extensive hiking trails and hunting land. If infected wandered into the forest, they could move for miles before degradation stops them. We don't have resources for forest search operations. Those infected are in the woods, and they're going to stay in the woods. 4:44 p.m. The Taylorsville Times, our local weekly newspaper, the editor, Jeff Hartman, is posting updates on their website and Facebook, coordinating public information with what I'm broadcasting. Between the radio, the newspaper's digital presence, and social media, we're reaching most of Taylorsville and Alexander County with emergency information. Small town communication networks activating. At 4:46 p.m., Carol Brennan says state resources are being allocated. Additional highway patrol troopers being sent from nearby posts. EMS resources from neighboring counties being pre-positioned. The state emergency management structure is responding to Alexander County's requests. But responding means moving resources from across the region. Time lag of 30 to 60 minutes for most assets. 4:48 p.m. The Walmart lockdown is being managed by store management and local customers. Someone inside with prior military experience has organized people into defensive positions. They're using shopping carts and merchandise to create barriers. 200 people turned their panic into organization because someone stepped up. That's small town response. When official resources aren't there, people handle it themselves. At 4:50 p.m., we're 1 hour and 50 minutes past initial incident. Infection count estimated at maybe 40 to 50 confirmed across Taylorsville and immediate surrounding area. That's out of a population of 2,100 in town and maybe 37,000 in the county. Small numbers compared to city outbreaks, but proportionally devastating for a community this small. 4:52 p.m. Temperature 75 degrees. Sun still bright but angling lower. 2 hours and 24 minutes to sunset. The transition from day to night is going to create visibility challenges in a rural area where street lighting is minimal and where some areas have no lighting at all. At 4:54 p.m., the furniture factory workers who evacuated early are being tracked through employment records and cell phone contact. The company is providing HR with employee lists. Those lists are being cross-referenced with 911 calls and incident reports to identify who might be infected and in what locations. 300 employees. Maybe 150 were at work when the incident started. Of those, maybe 50 evacuated before showing symptoms. Tracking 50 people across a county with limited resources is nearly impossible, but we're trying. 4:56 p.m. Getting a call from Tommy Chun at AutoZone. He's locked down in the store with 4 customers and 3 employees. They've been inside since early afternoon. Everyone is safe. Everyone is secure. He's asking how long they need to shelter in place. I'm telling him until National Guard arrives and clearing operations begin. That's maybe another 30 to 40 minutes. Can they hold that long? He says yes. At 4:58 p.m., Deputy Ramirez reports he's encountered multiple infected in the residential area east of the factory. He's requesting backup, but available units are committed to other incidents. He's alone in a residential neighborhood with maybe 3 or 4 infected individuals in the area, and backup is 15 to 20 minutes away. Rural policing with small force means officers operate alone more often than they should. That's fine when responding to normal calls. It's dangerous when responding to infected individuals. 5 p.m. exactly, 2 hours past initial incident. The outbreak started at the furniture factory with 1 infected worker. It's now distributed across at least 10 different locations in Taylorsville and surrounding areas. Resources are stretched. Response is fragmented. Containment is imperfect. But we're holding. Barely, but holding. At 5:02 p.m., I'm staying on this frequency through whatever comes next. The National Guard is 28 to 43 minutes out. State resources are moving toward Alexander County. The Unified Command Post is coordinating response. Stay where you are. Lock your doors. Stay on this frequency. Because Taylorsville is learning that small towns survive through community strength when official resources aren't enough. 5:04 p.m. Gary Howland says they've established a more comprehensive perimeter around the east side of town. Using the 5 Taylorsville officers, 10 sheriff's deputies, and 3 highway patrol troopers who've arrived. 18 law enforcement total for a perimeter covering maybe 30 square blocks of residential and industrial area. Not enough personnel. But it's what we have. At 5:06 p.m., the medical clinic is implementing triage protocols that Dr. Williams never thought she'd use in rural North Carolina. Bite victims being assessed for progression timeline. Those within the 5-minute window getting aggressive wound decontamination with antiseptic. Those past the window being isolated in separate areas. 17 patients. 4 examination rooms. 3 doctors. Making do with small-town medicine infrastructure. 5:08 p.m. Reports from the Walmart are holding steady. The 200 people inside have organized watch rotations. They've secured all entrances. They've moved infected individuals who were inside at lockdown to a contained area in the stockroom. Civilian crisis response in a big box store, becoming a case study in community organization under pressure. At 5:10 p.m., temperature 74 degrees. The afternoon is cooling steadily. The perfect autumn weather that brings tourists to the foothills for the changing leaves is creating moderate conditions for infected mobility. Not extreme heat accelerating degradation, not cold suppressing movement. Middle range where biology proceeds at standard pace. 5:12 p.m. The schools are completing student release. About 700 of 800 students picked up by parents or guardians. 100 students remaining between both campuses. Those 100 include kids whose parents are among the infected, kids whose parents can't be reached, and kids whose parents are emergency personnel who can't leave their posts. Principal Davidson and the teaching staff are preparing to shelter those 100 students overnight at the schools, if necessary. At 5:14 p.m., Sheriff Peterson is getting reports from the northern part of Alexander County. Stony Point and Hiddenite area, maybe 15 miles north of Taylorsville. People who work at the furniture factory but live in those communities are showing symptoms at home, creating satellite outbreak clusters in towns even smaller than Taylorsville. This isn't just a Taylorsville outbreak anymore. It's an Alexander County outbreak with Taylorsville as the epicenter. 5:16 p.m., Highway 64 is being managed by Highway Patrol. Eastbound traffic toward Hickory is heavy but moving. Westbound toward Lenoir is lighter. The checkpoint at the county line is screening effectively but creating backups. Vehicles waiting 15 to 20 minutes for screening. People evacuating our patient because they understand the screening is necessary. Small town culture means people generally cooperate with authority when they understand the reasons. At 5:18 p.m., the National Guard is reporting their ETA as 5:25 p.m., 7 minutes from now. Lead elements are approximately 30 vehicles with maybe 120 soldiers from the Statesville Armory. They're bringing tactical equipment, medical supplies, and command structure. 7 minutes until military support arrives. We've been holding for 2 hours and 18 minutes with limited resources. 7 more minutes. 5:20 p.m. Terrell Brennan says the state has allocated additional resources to Alexander County. Mobile medical units being dispatched from regional hospitals. Additional law enforcement from across the region. Emergency management coordinators from neighboring counties coming to support the EOC. The state emergency response system is activating for a rural county outbreak. Better late than never. At 5:22 p.m., I'm getting reports that some infected from the early waves are beginning to degrade. 2 hours and 22 minutes past initial incident means the earliest infected are approaching 2 hours post-transition. In moderate temperatures, that's when mobility starts decreasing. Movement becomes uncoordinated. Threat level diminishes. The timeline is starting to work in our favor for the earliest infections. But we've got second and third wave infections that are still in peak mobility. 5:24 p.m. The residential areas east of the factory are being systematically cleared by deputies working in pairs, going house to house when possible, checking on residents, identifying infected, securing civilians who are uninfected. Slow work with limited personnel, but it's comprehensive work. Deputy Ramirez and Deputy Clark are working Park Avenue. Deputy Kim and Deputy Foster are on East Side Drive. 4 deputies clearing 2 residential streets with maybe 100 homes total. It's going to take hours to clear those streets completely. At 5:25 p.m., I can hear them. The National Guard convoy coming up Highway 64 from the east. The sound of military vehicles is distinctive even from blocks away. Taylorsville has never had military presence like this. The last time we saw this many soldiers was probably during World War II. The Guard is here. 5:27 p.m. Lead vehicles arriving at the county government complex, where Sheriff Peterson has the command post. I'm watching through the station window. Humvees, troop transport trucks, communications vehicles. The convoy is rolling through downtown Taylorsville, and people in secured buildings are looking out windows watching. Military presence in a town that doesn't have a stoplight. At 5:29 p.m., National Guard Commander, I'm hearing on the scanner, it's Captain Sarah Mitchell. She's meeting with Sheriff Peterson and Chief Holland at the command post, establishing unified command. National Guard taking operational lead with local law enforcement supporting. Standard protocol for military support to civilian authorities during emergency. 5:31 p.m. The Guard is deploying immediately. Soldiers being assigned to reinforce the perimeter on the factory and East Side Residential. Setting up checkpoints on Highway 64 and Highway 90. Establishing mobile command post with communications equipment that's far beyond what our local agencies have. Professional military response integrating with local responders. At 5:33 p.m., temperature 73 degrees. The sun is lower now. Golden hour lighting across the foothills. The mountains to the west creating shadows. 1 hour and 43 minutes to sunset. The Guard arrival timing is good. They have daylight to establish operations before darkness complicates everything. 5:35 p.m. Captain Mitchell is on the emergency radio network, coordinating with all response units. Her voice is calm, professional, experienced. She's taking reports from scattered units and building a comprehensive tactical picture of the outbreak. Small town responders who've been improvising for 2 hours are getting professional military coordination. The change in operational efficiency is immediate. At 5:37 p.m., Gary Holland sounds relieved on the scanner. He's had 5 officers managing chaos for over 2 hours. Now he has 120 National Guard soldiers supporting his force. The resource equation just shifted dramatically. 5:39 p.m. The Walmart lockdown is being relieved by Guard units. 200 people who've been securing themselves for over an hour are going to be assessed and evacuated to safer locations. The Guard is bringing in medical personnel to screen everyone for bites and exposure. Civilian self-rescue transitioning to military-supported evacuation. At 5:41 p.m., the furniture factory clearing operation is being planned. Captain Mitchell says they'll begin systematic building clearing once perimeter security is fully established. The factory is a large structure with many rooms and hiding places. Clearing it properly requires tactical teams working methodically. Timeline for complete factory clearing. Estimated 2 to 3 hours once they begin. 5:43 p.m. I need to acknowledge what happened in the past 2 hours. Taylorsville had a zombie outbreak with 9 police officers, 20 sheriff's deputies scattered across the county, and volunteer emergency services. We improvised containment with resources meant for normal rural emergencies. People died. Neighbors attacked neighbors. Officer Stevens and Officer Walsh were injured. Factory workers we all knew were killed or infected. Families have clusters of infection in their homes. But we held containment. We prevented the outbreak from spreading catastrophically beyond the initial incident area. We did that with minimal resources and maximum community cooperation. At 5:45 p.m., the National Guard presence doesn't mean it's over. It means we have professional support for the work that's still ahead. Clearing operations, medical assessment, contact tracing, family cluster containment. It's going to take the rest of the night and probably into tomorrow. 5:47 p.m. Stay on this frequency. The National Guard is deploying across Taylorsville. Clearing operations beginning shortly. If you're in a secured location, maintain your position. If you need assistance, the emergency lines are being monitored by Guard Communications now. Because Taylorsville survived 2 hours with small-town resources. And now we're getting the help we needed from the start. 5:49 p.m. Guard units establishing checkpoints at key intersections. Highway 64 and Main Street. Highway 90 and Lillidoon Road. Industrial Drive and Park Avenue. The checkpoints create a contained grid in downtown and East Taylorsville. Vehicles attempting to leave the area being screened. Temperature checks, visual assessment, questions about exposure. Anyone concerning being diverted to the medical assessment point the Guard is setting up at the county government complex parking lot. At 5:51 p.m., Captain Mitchell is prioritizing operations. First priority, complete perimeter security to prevent infected from leaving the contained area. Second priority, systematic clearing of the furniture factory. Third priority, residential area sweeps to identify and secure infected individuals and homes. Fourth priority, medical assessment and treatment of bite victims. Professional prioritization organizing what was chaotic response. 5:53 p.m. The medical clinic is getting Guard medical personnel as support. Military medics with training in trauma and field medicine. Dr. Williams and her staff have been overwhelmed for 2 hours. The Guard support is giving them breathing room to properly assess and treat patients. 17 bite victims getting proper medical evaluation for the first time. At 5:55 p.m., temperature 72 degrees. The afternoon is cooling into evening. The sun is low enough now that the long shadows are stretching across town. The golden light is beautiful in that way. September foothills evenings are beautiful, and it's temporary. In 1 hour and 21 minutes, it'll be dark. 5:57 p.m. The residential clearing operations are beginning with Guard tactical teams supporting sheriff's deputies. Teams of 6 soldiers plus 1 or 2 deputies, working systematically through the east side neighborhoods. Going door to door, knocking, identifying residents, assessing for injuries or symptoms. Securing infected individuals when found. Slow methodical work, but comprehensive work. At 5:59 p.m., reports from the northern Alexander County satellite clusters. Hiddenite and Stony Point areas are being supported by Caldwell County Sheriff's deputies through mutual aid. The infected individuals in those communities, factory workers who drove home before symptoms manifested, are being contained with local and mutual aid resources. Small town networks extending across county lines. 6 p.m. exactly. 2 hours and 30 minutes past initial incident. The outbreak that started with 1 infected worker at the furniture factory has spread to approximately 60 to 70 confirmed infected individuals across Taylorsville and Alexander County. Out of a county population of 37,000, 60 to 70 infected is 0.2%. Small in percentage terms. Devastating in human terms for a small community where everyone knows everyone. At 6:02 p.m., the furniture factory clearing operation is beginning. Guard tactical team of 12 soldiers entering the building through the main entrance. They're equipped with tactical gear, communications, and weapons. They're moving section by section through the manufacturing floor. The factory is approximately 200,000 square feet. Clearing it completely is going to take hours. 6:04 p.m. I'm getting calls again. People in secured locations asking when they can come out. Families asking about loved ones who were at the factory. Parents asking about their kids who are still at the schools. I'm relaying questions to the EOC. Carol Brennan is coordinating answers. The Guard has established better information flow so Carol can actually provide answers instead of saying, "We don't know yet." At 6:06 p.m., the schools are coordinating with the Guard about student shelter and eventual release. The 100 students still at the campuses are being provided food from the cafeterias. Teachers and staff are staying with them. The Guard is sending personnel to secure the school perimeters and ensure no infected approach the buildings. 6:08 p.m., temperature 71 degrees. The sun is noticeably lower. The light is changing from golden to that deeper amber that comes before sunset. The temperature drop is steady. By the time darkness falls, we'll be in the upper 60s. By midnight, probably low 60s. The overnight cooling will help degrade the infected who are still mobile. Not dramatically like extreme heat, but steadily. At 6:10 p.m., Deputy Ramirez is reporting from the Park Avenue residential sweep. They've cleared approximately 20 homes so far. Found 3 infected individuals in separate residences. All 3 were family members of factory workers who came home before symptoms manifested. Each family cluster is 3 to 5 people. One infected worker creates a cascade of family infections before symptoms were recognized. 6:12 p.m., the Walmart is being evacuated under Guard supervision. The 200 people who sheltered there are being moved to buses for transport to the medical assessment point. Everyone getting screened. Anyone with bites or exposure getting isolated for observation. The civilian self-rescue that held for 2 hours is transitioning to official evacuation and care. At 6:14 p.m., Highway 64 westbound is being controlled now. Guard established a checkpoint on the western edge of town, similar to the highway patrol checkpoint on the eastern edge. Both directions screened. The major evacuation route being managed to prevent spread to Hickory or Lenoir. 6:16 p.m. Captain Mitchell is providing an operational update on the radio net. Perimeter established and holding. Factory clearing 40% complete. Residential sweeps progressing systematically. Medical assessment processing evacuees from secured locations. No breaches of containment reported. Professional situation report that gives all responders clear picture of operational status. At 6:18 p.m., I need to talk about fatigue. Gary Howland and his officers have been responding continuously for 2 hours and 48 minutes. No breaks, no rest. Adrenaline-sustained operations that take physical and emotional toll. The Guard arrival is letting local responders rotate to rest periods for the first time. Gary sounds exhausted on the scanner, but he also sounds relieved that help arrived. 6:20 p.m. The infection timeline for the earliest cases is approaching 2 hours, and 50 minutes post-transition. Those infected are in late degradation. Movement is slow and uncoordinated. Threat level is low. The biological clock is working in our favor for the first wave of infections. But second and third wave infections are still in peak mobility windows. The clearing operations are encountering active threats. At 6:22 p.m., reports from the factory clearing team. They've encountered approximately 15 infected individuals inside the building. Some are factory workers who never evacuated. Some are people who were inside and got bitten early in the incident. All 15 are in various stages of degradation based on when they transitioned. The factory is containing more infected than initial estimates suggested. 6:24 p.m. The residential sweeps are finding family clusters in predictable patterns. Infected factory worker comes home, attacks family before symptoms are recognized. Family members who survive the initial attack get bitten. They transition within 20 minutes. Entire household becomes infected except for members who lock themselves in rooms or escape the house. Each residential sweep is revealing small tragedies playing out in individual homes. At 6:26 p.m., Dr. Williams is providing medical assessment data to the EOC. Of the 17 bite victims treated at the clinic, 11 received wound decontamination within the critical 5-minute window. Of those 11, 8 are not showing progression. 3 showed symptoms despite treatment. 8 out of 11 success rate with immediate intervention, 73%. That's consistent with data from other outbreaks. 6:28 p.m. The sun is getting very low now. Maybe 48 minutes to sunset. The amber light is fading toward twilight colors. The shadows are long. The temperature is 70 degrees. The transition from day to night is beginning. Operations are going to continue through darkness, but visibility will be limited. At 6:30 p.m., the guard is deploying portable lighting equipment to key areas. The factory clearing team has tactical lights. The checkpoint positions are getting floodlights. The medical assessment point is being lit for nighttime operations. Professional night ops preparation that local resources couldn't provide. 6:32 p.m. I'm going to stay on this frequency through the night. The guard has communications infrastructure that's more sophisticated than this radio station. But the radio station is what Taylorsville knows. It's the voice people have been listening to for 2 hours and 52 minutes. I'm staying on because continuity matters during crisis. At 6:34 p.m., Carol Brennan says the state is providing additional overnight support, more medical personnel, more law enforcement, mobile command vehicles with better communications. The resources are arriving in waves as they're allocated and deployed. 6:36 p.m. Stay on this frequency. The National Guard is operating across Taylorsville. The factory is being cleared. The residential areas are being swept. Medical assessment is processing everyone who was exposed or potentially exposed. We're transitioning from containment crisis to systematic management, and I'm broadcasting through the transition. 6:38 p.m. The furniture factory clearing is 70% complete. Guard teams have systematically cleared the manufacturing floor, the office areas, the break rooms. They're working through the warehouse section now. Total infected found inside, 23 individuals. All neutralized or secured. More than anyone expected when this started. At 6:40 p.m., the residential sweeps have covered approximately half the East Side neighborhoods. Park Avenue, East Side Drive, and Industrial Drive mostly cleared. Teams are moving into the secondary streets. Finding infected in maybe 1 out of every 10 homes they check. 1 in 10 doesn't sound like much until you realize that's entire families lost in a town where everyone knows everyone. 6:42 p.m. Temperature 69 degrees. The sun is touching the horizon. The light is that particular deep orange that happens right before sunset. The mountains to the west are silhouettes. The foothills are going dark. 34 minutes to full sunset. At 6:44 p.m., the medical assessment point has processed approximately 300 people from various secured locations. Walmart evacuees. People who were at businesses downtown and got screened. Residents from cleared homes. 300 people being temperature checked, visually assessed, questioned about exposure. Of 300, 27 diverted for concerning symptoms or confirmed bites. 27 potential infections being isolated for observation. 6:46 p.m. The schools are preparing for overnight shelter of the 100 students who remain. The Guard has secured both campuses. Teachers are organizing sleeping areas in the gymnasiums. Food service is preparing dinner from cafeteria supplies. Parents who are able are being allowed to pick up students under Guard supervision and screening. But approximately 40 students don't have parents who can pick them up. Those 40 are spending the night at school. At 6:48 p.m., Highway 64 and Highway 90 checkpoints are operational and efficient. Guard screening vehicles with military precision. Traffic flow is managed. Wait times are minimal. The chaos of earlier evacuation traffic has been replaced by controlled movement. 6:50 p.m., Captain Mitchell is rotating Guard units to rest cycles. Soldiers who've been on perimeter duty for an hour getting relief. Clearing teams working in shifts. Professional military operations management, preventing fatigue-related mistakes. The Guard commander understands sustainable operations better than local responders who are running on adrenaline. At 6:52 p.m., reports from the Northern County satellite clusters. Hiddenite and Stony Point incidents are contained. Caldwell County Sheriff's support helped local resources manage the family clusters. Total infected in those communities, maybe 6 to 8 individuals, all secured or neutralized. The Alexander County outbreak is centralized in Taylorsville, with small satellite clusters managed effectively in outlying communities. 6:54 p.m. I'm getting word that some Taylorsville residents who evacuated early to Hickory or other surrounding communities are asking when they can return. The answer from the EOC is not yet. Clearing operations are ongoing. Full security assessment needs to complete before residents are allowed back into contained areas. Timeline for allowing returns. Probably tomorrow afternoon at earliest. At 6:56 p.m., the infection count is being updated by the Guard Command. Confirmed infected across all locations in Alexander County. Approximately 85 individuals. That's factory, residential clusters, satellite community clusters, and individuals found during clearing operations. 85 out of a county population of 37,000. 0.23% infection rate. The containment held despite limited initial resources. 6:58 p.m. Deputy Clark is on the scanner reporting from the residential sweep. They've cleared all of Park Avenue now, 38 homes. 4 infected individuals found and secured. 34 homes with residents sheltered safely. The systematic approach is working. Each street cleared is another section of town verified secure. At 7 p.m. exactly, 3 hours past initial incident. The outbreak started at 2:36 p.m. at the furniture factory with 1 infected worker attacking a supervisor. 3 hours later, we have 85 confirmed infected, most secured or neutralized, containment holding, and professional military support managing operations. Small town response sustained containment until military arrived. Military support is completing what local resources couldn't finish alone. 7:02 p.m. Temperature 68 degrees. The sun is below the horizon. We're in twilight now. Civil twilight for another 25 minutes. The light is fading, but visibility is still adequate. By 7:30, it'll be dark. The Guard's portable lighting is becoming essential. At 7:04 p.m., the factory clearing is complete. Guard teams have swept the entire building. Final count, 23 infected inside the factory. All have been secured. The building is now cleared and can be sealed until further investigation. 3 hours and 28 minutes to completely clear a 200,000 square foot manufacturing facility. Professional tactical clearing that local resources couldn't have accomplished. 7:06 p.m. The residential sweeps are approximately 75% complete. Most of the east side neighborhoods verified clear. Remaining streets being worked systematically. Teams are finding fewer infected in the outer areas. The infection concentrated closer to the factory. Pattern makes sense. Infected factory workers went to nearby homes first. At 7:08 p.m., Dr. Williams is coordinating with Guard medical personnel on treatment protocols. The bite victims who received immediate wound care are being monitored. The 3 who progressed despite treatment are in isolation. The medical coordination is professional and comprehensive now that military medical resources are integrated. 7:10 p.m. Carol Brennan says the state has approved extended National Guard deployment. The soldiers who arrived at 5:25 aren't leaving tonight. They're establishing overnight operations, rotating shifts, maintaining security through the night and into tomorrow. Guard presence for at least 24 to 48 hours minimum. At 7:12 p.m., I need to acknowledge Officer Stevens and Officer Walsh again. The 2 Taylorsville officers injured in the initial factory response. Both are receiving medical treatment now. Both are stable. Their injuries weren't life-threatening, but they were serious. Mike Stevens and Jennifer Walsh are two more people I know personally who paid a price for responding to this outbreak. 7:14 p.m. The student situation at the schools is settling for the night. Approximately 60 students picked up by parents under guard supervision in the past hour. 40 students remaining for overnight shelter. Teachers, principals, and support staff staying with them. The guard has assigned a security detail to each campus. The students are as safe as they can be in the circumstances. At 7:16 p.m., sunset, official sunset time. The last light is fading from the western sky. The mountains are dark silhouettes. The town is transitioning to darkness. Guard portable lights are creating pools of illumination at key points. But most of Taylorsville is going dark. Small town without extensive street lighting, becoming very dark very quickly. 7:18 p.m. The overnight operations plan is being coordinated. Guard maintaining perimeter security. Continuing residential sweeps under portable lighting. Processing remaining medical assessments. Monitoring the secured infected individuals for degradation and eventual complete immobility. Professional night operations that will continue until dawn at 6:43 a.m. tomorrow. 11 hours and 25 minutes of darkness ahead. At 7:20 p.m., Highway 64 is quiet now. Most evacuation traffic completed. The checkpoints are screening occasional vehicles, but traffic volume is minimal. People who evacuated are in Hickory or Lenoir or other surrounding communities. People who sheltered in place are still sheltering. 7:22 p.m. I'm going to continue broadcasting through the night. Updates as they come in. Coordination between Guard, local responders, and EOC. Information for the residents of Taylorsville and Alexander County who need to know what's happening in their community. Stay on this frequency. The National Guard is operating overnight. Clearing operations continue. Medical assessment ongoing. And I'm here providing the voice that's been on this frequency since 2:47 p.m. when this started. Because Taylorsville survived 3 hours with small-town resources. We're surviving the night with military support. And tomorrow we'll start recovery. 7:24 p.m. Temperature 67 degrees. Full darkness now except where guard lights illuminate operations. The September night is comfortable temperature-wise. Not cold enough to require heat. Not warm enough to cause heat stress. Mid-60s overnight low expected. The moderate overnight temperature will steadily degrade the infected who are still mobile without creating extreme conditions for responders or civilians. At 7:26 p.m., the residential sweeps are completing the final streets. Guard teams with portable lights working through the last section of the east side. Finding occasional infected in late-stage degradation. The early infected from 3 hours ago are mostly immobile now. The late infected from 2 hours ago are degrading rapidly. Biology working in our favor as hours pass. 7:28 p.m. Captain Mitchell is providing her evening operational summary on the radio net. Perimeter secure with no breaches. Factory cleared and sealed. Residential areas 90% cleared with final sweeps continuing. Medical assessment processed approximately 400 people, with 32 isolated for symptoms or exposure. No additional satellite clusters reported outside the county. Professional summary that gives clear operational picture. At 7:30 p.m., Carol Brennan says the state emergency management is establishing longer-term support plans. The immediate crisis response is transitioning to sustained support. Guard deployment for 48 to 72 hours. State medical resources for ongoing assessment and treatment. Mutual aid from surrounding counties for law enforcement coverage, while Taylorsville PD and Sheriff's Department recover. 7:32 p.m. The schools are settling into overnight routine. 40 students in gymnasiums with sleeping bags and blankets provided by staff. Teachers organizing quiet activities. Guard security maintaining perimeter. It's not ideal, but it's safe and organized. Those 40 kids are going to remember this night for the rest of their lives. At 7:34 p.m., the infected degradation timeline is now reaching the point where early cases are completely immobile. 3 hours and 28 minutes post-transition for the earliest infected means full degradation. Later infections are in various stages based on individual transition times, but overall mobility is decreasing. The threat level is dropping as biology takes its course. 7:36 p.m. Highway Patrol is coordinating with the Guard on maintaining checkpoint operations overnight. 2 troopers at the eastern checkpoint, 2 at the western checkpoint. Guard units supporting. The screening continues through the night for any late evacuees or emergency personnel moving in and out of the area. At 7:38 p.m., I'm getting calls from residents who sheltered in place asking about tomorrow. When can businesses reopen? When can students return to school? When does Taylorsville start looking like normal again? Answer, not tomorrow, probably not this week. The outbreak lasted 3 hours, but recovery will take days, maybe weeks. The furniture factory is a crime scene and will be investigated. Homes where people died are tragedy sites that families need to process. The town needs time. 7:40 p.m. Deputy Ramirez and Deputy Clark are finishing their residential sweep shift. They've been clearing houses for over 2 hours continuously. Both sound exhausted. Guard teams are rotating in to complete the final areas while the deputies get rest. Local responders who held the line for 3 hours before help arrived are finally getting relief. At 7:42 p.m., Dr. Williams is providing updated medical data. Of the 32 people isolated for symptoms, 18 have been confirmed as progressing to infection. 14 were precautionary isolations that cleared. 18 active infections being treated with what limited interventions exist for prion-based infection, which means supportive care and monitoring. There's no cure, just management until degradation completes. 7:44 p.m. The final residential sweeps are reporting all clear on the last streets. The east side of Taylorsville has been completely cleared, every home checked, every resident accounted for, all infected individuals identified and secured. Systematic clearing operations complete after approximately 2 hours of house-to-house work. At 7:46 p.m., temperature 66 degrees. The night is settling in. The darkness is complete except for guard lights and scattered residential lighting. The quiet is profound. Small-town quiet amplified by the absence of normal evening activity. 7:48 p.m. Captain Mitchell is establishing overnight watch rotations, 4-hour shifts for all personnel. Rest areas set up for off-duty soldiers. Food being provided from guard supplies, supplemented by local resources. Professional sustained operations management. The Guard commander is planning for multiple days of deployment and organizing accordingly. At 7:50 p.m., I've been broadcasting for 5 hours and 3 minutes. Since 2:47 p.m., when I first heard about the furniture factory incident. 5 hours of continuous emergency coordination. I'm tired in the way that sustained stress creates fatigue. But I'm staying on because Taylorsville needs continuity. 7:52 p.m. The governor of North Carolina is being briefed on the Alexander County outbreak. State leadership is receiving reports from emergency management, from the Guard Command, from local officials. The outbreak that started in a small Appalachian town is now part of the state's official crisis response portfolio. At 7:54 p.m., Sheriff Peterson is providing his evening assessment. His 20 deputies covered 463 square miles of county today. They responded to the Taylorsville crisis while maintaining coverage for the rest of Alexander County. They did it with mutual aid from surrounding counties and with professionalism despite being overwhelmed. Mike Peterson sounds proud of his people. He should be. 7:56 p.m. Gary Holland is finally getting rest. His 5 officers held Taylorsville together for over 2 hours before the Guard arrived. They're all exhausted. Some are injured. All of them did their jobs under circumstances they never trained for. Small town policing showing up when it mattered most. At 7:58 p.m., the overnight ahead is long but secure. Guard maintaining perimeter and operations. Medical personnel monitoring the infected and the exposed. Local responders getting needed rest. Residents in secured positions waiting for dawn and assessment. 8 p.m. exactly. 3 hours and 30 minutes past initial incident. Infection spread from 1 worker to 85 confirmed across Alexander County. Containment held despite limited resources. Military support completed what local response started. The outbreak is contained, not resolved, but contained. At 8:02 p.m., I'm going to continue through the night providing updates. The Guard has better communications than this radio station. But this radio station is what Taylorsville has listened to since this started. I'm the voice that's been here. I'm staying. 8:04 p.m. The town of 2,100 people learned today what happens when Outbreak comes to a small community. We learned that official resources are thin. That response depends on improvisation and community cooperation. That neighbors have to save neighbors because help takes time to arrive. We also learned that small towns survive through the strength of people who show up and do hard things. At 8:06 p.m., tomorrow morning when the sun rises at 6:43 a.m., Taylorsville is going to look different. We'll have National Guard presence in a town that's never had military deployment. We'll have investigation teams at the furniture factory. We'll have families processing losses that are still too fresh to fully comprehend. But we'll still be Taylorsville. We'll still be the small town in the foothills where everyone knows everyone. We survived today. We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes. 8:08 p.m. Stay on this frequency. Guard operations continuing overnight. If you're in a secured position, maintain it. If you need assistance, emergency lines are monitored by Guard communications. Because Taylorsville, North Carolina proved that small towns with limited resources can hold the line if the community works together. We held for 3 hours. The Guard is holding for us now. And tomorrow we start putting our town back together. Hello, listener. Population 2,100. 85 infected. Containment successful. Night falling over the Appalachian foothills. And I'm here on WACB 98.5 FM broadcasting through whatever comes next. This is David Morgan, staying on through the night. Taylorsville holding. Small town learning that survival means community when official resources aren't enough.